erotic driven media, sometimes you don't know what is this. I don't know. Half of the shows I watch, I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? I don't want to think about it.
Everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai. And joining me tonight, I just have our chivalry of Shota's Shotaro.
Oh, honey.
Oh my. So seductive. Jesus Christ.
It's not seductive, it's just gay.
Okay. Well, getting right into our topic for tonight, what we are going to be talking about tonight is about a month or so ago, at least at the time of recording this, as many of you may know, the United Nations proposed an initiative which seeks to curb child exploitation around the world, and part of that initiative deals with banning certain artworks considered obscene or offensive that could be interpreted within the anime community to be banning Loli and Shota artwork. So that is what we're going to be talking about tonight, and some of this, and we're also going to be talking about some stuff, some tangential stuff that is related to this sort of crackdown you've seen recently of these social media companies and others trying to crack down on artwork and depictions of seemingly underage characters like this. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with the UN proposal. So the UN proposed this initiative back on February 16th, 2019. I'm going to read out the part of the proposal that's actually that pertains to the actual Loli and Shota artwork materials. So the proposal reads in part, quote, "Child pornography is defined in Article 2 OPSC as any, quote, any representation of a child engaged in real or simulated explicit sexual activities, regardless of the means used, or any representation of the sexual parts of a child for primarily sexual purposes. The qualification, quote, by whatever means, reflects the broad range of material available in a variety of media online and offline. It includes, inter alia, visual material such as photographs, movies, drawings, and cartoons, audio representations, any digital media representation, live performances, written materials in print or online, and physical objects such as sculptures, toys, or ornaments." So that's pretty broad, to say the least, wouldn't you say, Sho?
Yes, it is very broad. One comment I have on these definitions is that it is possible that when they said in their first sentence any representation of a child, that they were specifically talking about real children, in which case all of these materials they described, if real children were involved in the creation of drawings or sculptures or whatever, then obviously it should be banned, even though the result is like a sculpture or whatever.
Or a drawing or whatever, yeah.
It says that the children in this definition would be engaged in real or simulated sexual activities, but they didn't define what a child is. Specifically, they didn't differentiate between a real child or a fictional child. So it's kind of vague in that sense, and I think it can be misinterpreted to include fictional children that are not based on any real activity or real children, such as a lot of anime and hentai, and other
and manga and visual novels,
and other properties that are related to anime. And I don't know if this was intentional or unintentional vagueness, but I'm certainly seeing, if this was passed, it being applied to anime.
Yeah. I do, before we go any further, I do want to point out that I think you and I show can both agree, like, the idea that behind this, like, protecting children from exploitation, actual children from exploitation, is actually a good thing.
Definitely. It is
I think you and I also kind of agree that actual child pornography is incredibly disgusting.
Of course. And I think that the UN definitely should be taking stances against child exploitation because it is still a very big issue and it is largely unprosecuted and managed by the law, and it does need a harsh crackdown. So I agree with the UN's intention, but I don't know if the specifics are quite fine-tuned enough.
Yeah, and to be fair to the people who drafted this initiative, like 90% of the text of the initiative, which I have, bless me, I have actually read the entire thing, is actually devoted to, like, children in the real world, actual child exploitation, actual distribution of child pornography, things of that sort. It's a very small percentage of the text that they're designating this for. So maybe it was intentionally vague to allow people to, discuss this, and who knows? This hasn't been passed yet. This has been thrown out there for people to comment on. And anyone can comment on it. You don't have to be a member of the UN. You don't have to be a diplomat or anything. Anyone can send comments in about it. But I'd be very surprised if, with the amount of backlash that this has received from the anime community and from a lot of Japanese people in particular, that this isn't changed in some way to make it, if not less broad, than just completely out entirely. I think it's also fair to point out that for the purposes of this discussion, like, I hate to call you out, but you and I engage with this kind of material frequently.
If you say so. You can only speak for yourself.
Okay, I will speak for myself. Yes, I am a lolicon. I do not hide that fact. This is my biggest issue with this is, number one, the fact that it's so broad, but number two, that it can be, that it's used to justify cracking down on the right thing, but for the wrong reason. Another quote that I can pull from this, from the initiative, is the explanation that the committee gives for wanting to include this stuff about, Loli and Shota artwork in it. So I'm gonna quote the document again. So, quote, "The committee is of the view that simulated explicit sexual activities should be interpreted as any material, online or offline, that depicts or otherwise represents any person appearing to be, and that's an important part of the statement, appearing to be a child engaged in real or simulated sexually explicit conduct, and realistic and or virtual depictions of a child engaged in sexually explicit conduct. Such depictions contribute to normalizing the sexualization of children and fuels the demand for child sexual abuse material." Now, I'm gonna state very equivocally, do I think there are people, even in the anime community, do I think there are pedophiles in the anime community that use Loli and Shota artwork to get off? Yes, I do. However, I don't think that the mere existence of this material contributes to people becoming pedophiles. I think that's a completely ridiculous stance.
Sorry to interject. I don't believe that a majority of the anime community or of the Shota and Loli community are pedophiles. I don't know if you agree or disagree. No.
I didn't mean a majority, but to say that there are none, I think would be kind of disingenuous. There's got to be at least a handful.
I guess I just wanted to comment that I think a majority are not, and I think you agree with me.
I think so too. I just think that it would be kind of foolish to assume that there are none entirely within the entire fandom.
Okay.
I think there's got to be at least some, which is, I can kind of see where they're coming from, that there probably might actually be actual pedophiles out there who get off of this kind of stuff. But by and large, pedophiles are not searching for Loli and Shota artwork. They're searching for actual children.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's my biggest
Exactly.
biggest
Why would
beef against their that's my biggest beef against the committee's explanation of why they put this in there.
now I'm trying to think. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what would drive. This is so. I honestly don't know. I don't know what a pedophile would do and why they would consume Shota lolly art instead of real child porn. You know what? I'm not gonna even. I don't even want to go into it.
We're not
I'm so
psychologists.
confused. I don't know.
It is,
I don't want to, because basically that question leads to that availability of child pornography, and I don't know about the availability of child pornography, and honestly, I don't want to know. So I will just leave that question out there.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also a point of contention for me that I've always believed in the idea of. So Loli and Shota artwork is at the behest of artists who create them. I think this is a huge crackdown on actual freedom of expression for artists, because this particular initiative explicitly states that they don't actually have to be underage characters. They only need to look underage. And that's a huge distinction if you think about it, because think of all of the characters that you might know of in anime or manga or what have you, that they might look underage, but they're not. And hell, anime in particular sort of values this youthful aesthetic that a lot of these characters have. You can have a 30-year-old anime character who looks like she might be 17.
Just curious. I didn't catch where you're getting this definition from.
I'm trying to find the exact quote.
Well, while you find that quote, I would just like to comment that who is judging what looks young? Because honestly, I am leaning to say that it's a very racial thing, because, you know, to an Asian audience, a lot of older Asian people don't necessarily look their age. And so then fictional depictions of Asian people would be like, to a Western audience, they might be young. To an Asian audience, they might be old. Like, who decides who looks young and old? It's so subjective. And I feel like it's slightly racist.
Who decides what the definition of youth is? That's a good question too. So the actual quote that I got that from is from the committee's explanation as to why they included the drawings and cartoons clause. Should be interpreted as any material online or offline that depicts or otherwise represents any person appearing to be a child engaged in real or simulated sexually explicit conduct. So, like, a good example of this, at least in anime form, is...
What does that even mean?
I don't know. That's a good question. But I think from the...
Wait,
from
so
what
this
I'm
is...
reading,
Wait, so this is like from an official statement?
the committee...
Not a document.
The committee it's not from the document, but the committee said this was their reasoning in putting that in there.
Okay, so like we're picking apart like the exact words that they're using, but like I don't know if it's like, well, everything the UN says is not legally binding. First of all, they're just a recommendation, so this can all be taken with a grain of salt. But we're gonna pick it apart anyways. Second of all, that's just so weird, because actual pornography, like live action pornography of adults, like no, like. It doesn't matter what age you appear to be. The pornography studio keeps a record of what age you actually are, and that's the legal status. Like, who cares what you look like? It's what you are. Like, that's so weird to include that. I feel like that's very standard procedure for pornographic material. I don't know why you would say it like that.
Yeah, like, as I was getting to, a good example of this in anime form is in the Monogatari series. There's the character of Shinobu, who has this appearance when you first see her in the anime as like a 6 or 7 year old girl, but she's like 500 years old.
Oh, honey, such an amazing trope.
I know it is a trope, and it's meant to appeal to a specific segment of the audience, mainly lolicons like myself, which it does spectacularly. But that's my point. Like, as a writer or as someone who's creating this stuff, you are ultimately the arbiter of what is and isn't right in that particular world. So in this particular instance, she's like 500 years old, and like, who cares? I mean, so what? She looks like a child. Like, who cares? Yeah, she's sexualized, but again, fictional.
I think the main key is fictional. I don't really care what she appears to be like. It's like the main thing is she's a fictional entity. And she honestly she has no age because she is not a human. She is a bunch of lines put together based on no real person. So she doesn't really have an age.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out, like you said it at the beginning, like there seems to be, or well, I think there should be a different standard between actual real life people and fictional characters, because like, again, like you said at the beginning, if you drew an actual child being in a sexual situation, yeah, I could see that being a problem. But if it's some fictional character that's spraying a hole from your brain, who cares? Like, there's no one's actually been injured in any of this. You can't say there's been a crime because there is no victim.
I guess. Well, there are victimless crimes, technically. But I mean, the point is that, child exploitation laws are in place to protect children, and anime does not inflict harm on children, so you're not protecting anyone. But like the rhetoric that people for these kind of laws use is that media like this will encourage pedophiles and normalize pedophilia and increase the rates of pedophilia, and which I think is bullshit. Honestly, if there are pedophiles consuming Loli or Shota media, if you take away the Loli and Shota media, I mean, the pedophiles are still there. They're just going to look for other things. They might
actually look for real children.
Well, maybe. I don't want to get into whether it's helpful. I don't think there's a definitive study to see whether Loli or Shota art is helpful or harmful to the actual committing of crimes by pedophiles. But
should there be?
There probably should be a study done.
Because I think so too. I think there should be like a definitive study done that could actually show whether this helps or hurts.
Yeah, but I'm like 99% sure that Loli and Shota media does not create pedophiles, because to me that's just silly. Like, it doesn't, that sort of logic doesn't apply to a lot of different mental conditions and disorders, so why should it apply to pedophilia? And like, media isn't something that can create problems. It's something that can comment on it, and it can reflect society. I think it's a really fear-mongering tactic to say that media is going to create all these people with all these conditions. No, it's not going to do that. That's just silly, and it doesn't apply to any other cases. So that's just like, to me, it's just so silly.
It is. And so one of the articles that I read about this, they quoted a bunch of Japanese people, like on Twitter and stuff, that were responding to this. And they mentioned that the general gist that the Japanese audience has received this protocol with is, and I think this is actually a good point that's being made, is that the UN seems to be trying to give non-existent fictional characters the same human rights as real people. And that seems like a really bad precedent to set when you start giving inanimate objects human rights.
I mean, there's already precedent for that, honey. People have married inanimate objects, haven't they?
Well, yeah, people have attempted to marry inanimate objects, and in some cases they actually have. But that doesn't mean that the inanimate object themselves is technically given human rights.
I'm pretty sure that there have been cases where inanimate objects are treated as people, but that's beyond the case. I think that
my thing is like, where would this potentially end? I mean, you have to take anything to its extreme to find out if it's actually going to be a good general principle. And the thing that I came up with when I was reading this is, would you give the Mona Lisa human rights? Would you give the painting of the Mona Lisa human rights?
I'm sure some people would argue yes.
I'm sure some people would. I just can't fathom a good logical argument for making that happen. Like,
so that you can sue on behalf of the Mona Lisa for like infringement or something. I don't know.
Not even infringement. Like, say someone admitted that they were sexually aroused and they got off to the Mona Lisa. Does the painting itself now, if you go by that standard, does the painting now have a right to sue on behalf of itself? Like, really?
I'm pretty sure there have been cases around the world where people have sued on behalf of inanimate objects.
Yeah, but I think a lot of those cases are around things like vandalism and destruction of property, not around like things like pedophilia. I can't fathom. If there is, I haven't heard of it. I think it would be ridiculous if there were, but I can't. I never heard of a case coming up in anywhere around the world where someone was suing a pedophile on behalf of a painting.
That actually sounds quite hilarious, the way you stated that.
It sounds like the plot of a fucking Ace Attorney case. I swear to God.
Sounds like a punchline to a cheap joke.
Except
it's real life.
But it's frustrating to me because you can't treat fiction as if it's real. That's part of the problem. So many people want to interpret fiction as if it's real. Like, fiction can be great. Fiction can be a great way to escape the real world. But at the end of the day, fiction is not the real world. And it doesn't really have any bearing over the real world unless you let it have bearing over your life. And in which case, I would argue you kind of have a problem.
Exactly. It's not the problem of the fiction that these people are committing crimes. It's a problem of the people themselves that use the fiction as a scapegoat to be like, oh, this thing triggered me and that's why I committed mass murder. That's why I raped all these people. No, it's not the fiction. If the fiction didn't exist, anything else could have triggered you and you would have done the same thing. Like, that's just a really weak reasoning, and you shouldn't be targeting the media because that's just a scapegoat. You should be targeting the actual people and their mental health conditions and how to improve mental health.
Exactly. Like, what if a significant preponderance of pedophiles all of a sudden started saying that the color blue triggered them? Are we going to ban the color blue everywhere? No, because that would be stupid.
Exactly.
That's
a very strong point, because like that's a very strong point. And I support that point.
Yes. Ban the color blue.
I hate blue.
Blue
is mask, and it oppresses women, and that's when you have to ban it.
All right, well, before you go into your full SJW persona, I would like to point out that we haven't really talked about this, but it also mentions in the initiative that was put forth written materials. So this could also include fan fiction or any kind of fiction that depicts minors that could be even interpreted as in sexual situations. So this is not only just audio and visual material that this pertains to. This also pertains to written materials as well.
So dumb. I feel we're like, these kind of restrictions feel so medieval to me, like very
puritanical?
Very puritanical, honestly.
Yeah, and again, I've read the entire text of this initiative. I think there's a lot of it in there that is actually dedicated to giving different nations guidelines for how to deal with actual child exploitation, actual child pornography, especially the distribution of child pornography, and giving examples of appropriate punishments to incorporate into your justice system to perhaps curb this idea, the distribution of child pornography and child exploitation, which I think is a good idea. I think by and large that's a good idea. I can't really think of any reason to not punish people for doing stuff like that.
And honestly, the punishments that are already in place need to be harsher, even in like highly developed countries. I think the punishments are way too lax. I definitely think they should increase those punishments to be more appropriate to the crimes.
Yeah, but when you're going into the territory of fiction, I think that's when you've gone officially too far. Yeah, I can't get behind this simply because of this. I do hope that when they revise this, I believe it's going to be sometime after March 30th, 2019, when they start revising this. I really just hope they take this whole clause about fictional representation out, instead of just editing it in some clever way. They just need to take it out.
I don't know if there's like a market for drawn child pornography where the models of the drawings are actual children. Because I feel like that would be a loophole that they're trying to catch, but I don't think that's an actual thing, but I don't know.
And it might be. That might actually be what they're trying to do, but the fact that this can be so broadly interpreted is a problem. I think if that's the idea, if that's the loophole they're trying to get around or close, then they should specifically state like drawings or photographs or cartoons of actual people.
Yeah, they should. I would, if I were to offer a recommendation, I would say they should say any real children involved in any production of media, including, and then all of that, and then that would be fine.
But anyway, so if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard about this, well, now you have. I will also include links to both the full text of the initiative proposal and a couple of articles that talk about this in the description below if you want to look into it further. But I want to move this over to you because you brought something to my attention that the more I think about it, the more I think this might have actually been a cover for something.
Yeah, so on February 12th, which is like 5 days before this UN proposal went out, I believe.
Yeah.
There was a whistleblower that revealed, quote unquote, 60,000 people were raped by UN aid workers. And the UN employs 3,300 pedophiles. This is a claim by United Nations official Andrew MacLeod. And he bases this claim on an extrapolation of a report by some person. Hold on. It's a lot of people. A lot of people. Okay, I don't know, remember. I can't find out the name of the person, but it's an extrapolation based on a report of by another UN official of a certain number of victims.
I have the
raped.
quote for you from the article.
Thank you.
It says the professor's grim 60,000 figure is based on UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' admission last year that the UN peacekeepers and civilian staff abused 311 victims in just one 12-month period over the course of 2016.
Yeah. So that's a pretty huge blow to the UN, and their proposal only comes 5 days after this whistleblowing, which leads to the possibility that the UN proposal might be a cover-up to hide away the fact that their organization is involved with child molestation and the people they employ actually commit child molestation. Which honestly, I mean, as much as, this is actually, these numbers are disgusting, and the fact that aid workers are doing this is disgusting, I can somewhat empathize with this situation because a lot of these workers are volunteers and they don't go through a lot of screenings. Like, you don't know who's joining this organization. There's no qualifications. You're just like, you want to help out? Okay, you come on. Let's volunteer and help people. Like, who knows who is working for the UN?
You volunteered? Let me send you to this backwater part of the world.
you want to do non-paid work for me? Okay, honey, I'm not going to ask questions, honey. You come in. But, like, I mean... So that's the kind of situation the UN is in, and this is what happens is that, like, a lot of really bad people who don't get background checks are coming in now, or have been coming in for a while, and committing these horrendous crimes, which definitely, I don't know where, but somewhere it is recommended that there be more more rigorous checks and requirements for UN volunteers, which is obviously necessary, seeing as how many crimes have been committed by these UN aid workers. And it's very hard. It's very sad that this is a problem, that someone who volunteers as a UN aid worker would do these kind of things. But I guess it's just a sad reality that there's a lot of bad people out there that want to do this. And it's a sad reality that the UN is going to have to be much more rigorous in its volunteer process, which, again, that means they're going to have less volunteers and less manpower to help them in their actual humanitarian work, which needs to be done. But at the same time, they can't have these unchecked volunteer workers running around doing all these horrible things. So it's really a lose-lose situation, and it just sucks all around. But going back to the main topic that we were talking about, that, you know, the broad terms of the UN's proposal might be a sort of excuse for them to prosecute on fictional media, which is it's super easy to prosecute on fictional media because it's everywhere. It's super difficult to actually prosecute child trafficking rings because the children themselves are brainwashed to not want to seek help. And it's hard to prosecute when the victim themselves doesn't want to cooperate with the prosecution. So it's extremely difficult to do that. So I could see this UN proposal as being so vague as to be like, oh, we made this proposal. Oh, we're prosecuting all these fictional media. Oh, we're actually helping we've actually got results. We've prosecuted all this media, but as a distraction from the huge whistleblowing that just happened. So yeah. I could see that as a reason why it's so vague.
And the only reason we bring this up really is the fact that it's very convenient timing.
Yeah, 5 days between.
5 days after the whistleblower report comes out. And actually, I'm actually amazed that this did not get more play and like more spread throughout like the community than the actual proposal itself. Because the proposal is something that isn't even agreed upon yet. It's literally just a proposal. This is something that may have actually happened within the organization. I'm surprised that I'm always surprised at what gets more traction in news cycles than some other things, but I'm just really surprised that this isn't. And again, I think it's also worth mentioning that this is, I don't think, at least to my knowledge, no one's been actually prosecuted yet because of this, but this is just a whistleblower report. So this is essentially an allegation at this point.
But didn't the UN official admit to the molestation victims on the 12-month period?
They did. Well, at least 311 of them, yes.
So partially true, but the rest is allegation.
I mean, let's be honest. If it's any more than one, it's definitely terrible.
Of course, but I mean, these numbers are just mind-blowingly disgusting. So.
Yeah, and it seems to be getting larger. I think that's the whole point, that it seems to be growing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's great that this comes forward. It's just and you know what, they might. I'm not I'm not conspiracy minded. I'm not saying that this initiative, the banning of Loli and Shota artwork initiative thing, is directly correlated to this. It just, the timing is very convenient. It makes me question things. But yeah, I'm glad you brought this to my attention, because it's definitely something that needs to be out there. Even if it's not directly related to the anime manga initiative thing, it definitely needs to be known.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, so tangentially related to all of this, over the last several months, there have been a number of social media platforms on the internet that have also started to react to child exploitation and pedophilia interaction on their platforms. Two of the most visible, I would say, and most recent have occurred on YouTube and Reddit. So I want to talk about the YouTube thing for just a moment, because that is sort of the most recent. So very recently, it was reported by a YouTuber, Matt Watson, in a video that he uploaded, that there is what's being described as a, quote, softcore pedophilia ring on YouTube, and that they have been exploiting YouTube's recommendation algorithm to discover images that have children in them that aren't necessarily sexual in any way whatsoever. They're videos with children in them. And as you can imagine, the immediate response of corporate America, who invests in YouTube, was to pull out as fast as they fucking could. And of course, then YouTube actually ended up responding with a typical knee-jerk reaction of, well, that's it. No more of this. So what YouTube did ostensibly was put into place a system in which, because backing up a little bit, the way that the algorithm was being manipulated was was were going in and leaving very innocuous looking comments on YouTube videos for other pedophiles to find. And it was like coded and stuff, like a lot of coded language, a lot of seemingly like innocent words being used in really weird ways. A lot of farm animals were used in this for some reason. But YouTube's response to this was, well, I guess what we're going to have to do is start demonetizing videos for any of these types of comments that we find. So this has led to a lot of channels getting their videos, or in some cases, their entire channels demonetized for having completely family-friendly content on the platform. It's just that there are images of children completely clothed, not doing anything sexual at all in their videos. I forget the name of the channel now. I should have saved a link to this, but there's a channel, or what? I think it's still there. There's a channel on YouTube of a family that does like daily vlogs, and it's just the family, like cataloging their daily life and all the stuff that they do. It's incredibly wholesome. I watched a couple of the videos when I found out about this. It's incredibly wholesome, incredibly family-friendly, incredibly family-oriented, but they got their entire channel demonetized because there were pedophiles leaving these types of comments on their videos, because this family has 3 very young children. One of them does happen to be I think he's 5 years, is a 5-year-old son who's a gymnast, and you get to see him parading around in spandex. So I kind of see what they're trying to prevent here, but at the same time, I think it's such a knee-jerk reaction that they're not thinking about how this is hurting people who are doing no wrong.
So I just want to clarify the relation to the UN, in that both these bodies are sort of going too far in their pursuit of trying to prosecute child exploitation. But a major difference here is that the UN wants to, the main reason the UN is doing this, I can't think of any other reason, would be to, obviously, is to protect children That's why they're proposing their proposal. But YouTube, obviously, the reason why they're doing it is for money, for their advertisers. So there's a big difference there. And honestly, my reaction to this YouTube controversy, I don't know what your reaction is. You tell me your reaction first, Alex. What do you think about this?
I think so I think that they're actually trying to go they're trying to go up against the right problem, but they're going about it the wrong way. And I don't know what the right way is, but I know this is definitely the wrong way.
Oh, I know the right way.
Okay, well, obviously when you find a pedophile, fucking kill them. That's a good way to start.
I do not support the death penalty.
Where was I going with this? I think it's entirely unfair to, especially on YouTube, which relies on content creators uploading a constant stream of new content to their platform. I think it's wholly unfair to punish content creators for the actions of the people that watch their videos. I don't think that you, like, for example, let's say you live next door to someone, right, in like a subdivision or some kind of suburb somewhere, and it was discovered one day that your next door neighbor was a murderer. Should you then be punished as the next door neighbor just because you tangentially knew this person? No. So why should someone who creates content be responsible for all of the actions of people that view the content?
Taking that example even further, it's more like a door-to-door salesman leaves a flyer on your door, and then you're prosecuted for that flyer, and you didn't even do anything. Like, how are you supposed to control who goes up to your door and puts flyers on your door? Like, what the, like, that's more appropriate. Like, you did, like, they're the most tangential relationship ever possible. That's your relation to this commenter. That's your relationship. Like, this, it's just uncontrollable. YouTube is an open platform. Anyone can comment on anything. How are you supposed to be responsible for whoever finds your videos and comments on your video? It's just the only prerequisite to leaving comments on YouTube videos is that you have an account, which is free and easily obtainable. You can get one in less than 2 minutes. Yeah, and this isn't the first time YouTube has been unfair to its content creators, so at least they're consistent.
Yeah. I mean, at least in YouTube's case, I can see, they're a business. They gotta do what they can to make money, and of course they gotta make as many advertisers as happy as they can so that advertisers continue to advertise on their platform. I get that, but I think that you should really think out the reactions that you have to news like this. It certainly shouldn't have come within a week or two of the video that exposed this going up. I think it required way more planning and way more thought out than what happened. I'm pretty sure, though, because of the enormous backlash this is getting from people on the platform, that they're gonna walk this back. I just don't know in what way they're gonna walk it back. Because as I said, it's completely unfair to punish a content creator for the actions of people who may or may not have consumed their content. Yeah, and this is also not a new thing, because people who, like, in the past, especially in the 90s, people who created video games were being accused of causing actual violence. Even further back than that, there are like writers who were novelists who were essentially tried in the court of public opinion for their novels or their works of literature causing violence and all kinds of things. So this isn't a new idea.
No.
This is just the newest interpretation of the idea.
So I just wanted to round off this YouTube discussion by my thoughts on how to deal with this. And my thoughts are that you should just not allow children on the YouTube platform, because first of all, it's not, I don't think YouTube is not, it ostensibly, like, it tries to be child friendly, but it's not. Honestly, if I had a child, YouTube is not a place I would want them to be on, because there's some fucked up shit, not just in the comments, also in the videos and the video algorithms. It's the wild, wild west of the internet is YouTube. And YouTube tries to control their content, but it's not working. And
I do think that what you say, like the Wild Wild West, that you can ostensibly upload anything as long as it's not pornographic or excessively like an actual snuff film. I actually think that's a good thing, but I do agree with you that just get children off, make it an adults only platform.
Exactly. I do not think that YouTube as a platform is at all compatible, is at all child friendly, and I don't think you'd have to make major reforms to the platform to make it child friendly, and you might as well just make it a different platform, which I think they're trying to do, which I think they should do.
YouTube Kids. Yeah, they have YouTube Kids, which I would not be opposed to the idea of having two different YouTubes. A YouTube for people who are 15 and younger, and a YouTube for people who are 15 and older.
Yeah. Like, I think it's just stupid to try and make YouTube child friendly because it's not going to work. You're going to have to rework the entire website.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. I think that actually might be the best way for them to go in the future. And and again, I think, is it possible that YouTube Kids could eventually have the same thing happen to it? Yeah, probably. But at least then you have it contained. And then if you have the website segregated.
The thing is that I would agree with heavy monitoring and immediate censorship of comments based on trigger words by the platform itself on YouTube Kids, because
yes,
the kids don't really care about moderating their comments. That's what the platform should be doing. But on YouTube Adults, I don't want the adults to be censored by the company. The channels individually can censor their own content. There's a huge split in the adults want their freedom of speech. They want to be able to garner their own comment section, create their own community, and they have the right to do so. Some I mean, there is a lot of YouTube harassment, and that is a huge problem on YouTube, but allegedly adults can deal. Okay, I don't know. I don't want to encourage YouTube harassment because that's quite toxic.
That's a rabbit hole. I don't think you want to go down.
Adults are more equipped to deal with harassment than children.
Yes,
I'll say that.
I think the phrase you're looking for is adults they should have far more agency to deal with this than children should be expected to have.
Exactly. So there's a completely a laissez-faire sort of management kind of works for an adult YouTube platform, kind of, but it definitely does not work for a children YouTube platform, and it should definitely be way, way, way more strict with the type of content that is allowed and the type of comments that are allowed if you were to make it child friendly, which is why they should definitely, I think they should definitely split up the different content.
Yeah, I would actually be in favor of segregating YouTube into a children's or kids and adults section. I would be all for that. Again, they do have YouTube Kids, which is kind of slowly, I guess, taking off, but I think they should probably put more effort into number one, getting anyone under. I don't even really know what the cutoff age should be. 16, maybe. 17? I don't know.
Right now,
maybe even 18.
Right now for YouTube it's 13, but obviously children under the age of 13 are still making accounts. So
oh yeah, because it's really easy to fake your age on because no one fakes their age online. Yeah, I think that definitely needs to be looked into, and they should get this going more so than they've got it. And just get everyone under a certain age. I don't know whether it needs to be 15, 16, 17, even 18 perhaps. Just get them off of the adult YouTube and then put them on YouTube Kids. That's not to say that people, if you want to put family-friendly stuff on adult YouTube, I guess that should be allowed too.
We are so off topic, but
we are so off topic.
Yeah, we should just.
It's a discussion. It's a discussion worth having, I think. Anyway, I want to move on to the Reddit thing before we start to wrap up here. So, full disclosure, I don't really use Reddit. Pretty much the only time I ever go on Reddit is when someone gives me a link to something on Reddit. So I don't have an account there. I've never used it extensively for any kind of purpose other than, like I said, when someone sends me a link. But I did want to bring this up because there was someone in our on our Discord server, Chris, who kind of made us aware of some of the stuff that was going on Reddit. So just over a year ago now, Reddit changed their terms of service to include a clause about child abuse, sexual imagery. I'm gonna read it off right now. And then I'm also going to talk about the really stupid clause in this rule. So the rule on Reddit terms of service reads, quote, Reddit prohibits any sexual or suggestive content involving minors or someone who appears to be a minor. This includes child sexual abuse imagery, child pornography, and any other content, including fantasy content, e.g. stories, quote, Loli anime cartoons, that depicts, encourages, or promotes pedophilia, child sexual exploitation, or otherwise sexualizes minors or someone who appears to be a minor. Now here's the really stupid part of this rule. Depending on the context, this can, in some cases, include depictions of minors that are fully clothed and not engaged in overtly sexual acts. So what I gather from this is, don't include any pictures of minors whatsoever, even if they're fucking drawn. Why? Like, depending on the context. What's the fucking context? How about this is context? It's fucking fictional. Anyway, I wanted to bring that up specifically because it's such a stupid clause, and this clause actually got used. So apparently there is a moderator on, I guess, several subreddits on the website who is known as HoloFan for Life, who actually got banned for uploading an image of the main character in the currently airing anime Kaguya-sama Love is War wearing a bikini. Like she's clothed, like there's no nipples showing, there's no nothing, like there's no pointy nipples showing, no nothing. It's like she's wearing a bikini top, bikini bottom, and she's even wearing like a shawl around her waist. And this got him, like, this didn't get him a warning. This didn't get him it got him banned from the site. And luckily he was able to appeal and he won his appeal. But the fact that this was done at all, like, you could go to any public beach in America or anywhere in the fucking free world and see that any day of the week. And they're saying this needs to be banned simply because the character being pictured is 17 years old. Like, you can go see 15-year-olds dressed like that at the beach.
Are you encouraging this activity, Alex?
No, I'm just saying that it's so stupid to ban something that you can so easily see in public anywhere. I don't get the idea that some people have, like, behind this. Like, and this is not, obviously not exclusive to Reddit. There are other social media platforms that do this all the time, that just will ban content and then give no specific reason. It's like, well, it may not specifically violate our terms of service, we just don't like it. It's like, okay. That happens more often than I would like to admit with some stuff that I have posted on, especially on our Facebook group for the podcast. I actually got a 3-day ban for posting an image of someone who was fully clothed. I appealed it and I lost. I don't understand, but whatever. Anyway, so the point... Oh, go ahead.
To me, the main problem here is that, you know, these websites, YouTube, Reddit, and a whole host of most other social media platforms that we use are free to use, which means that the people that run the website have to rely on advertisers, and the advertisers decide what content is allowed on the platform, right? So... Yeah. I mean, that's just the structure of social media. And
can I ask you something?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that some of this might actually be mitigated if social media websites and platforms became pay to use?
That's exactly what I was about to get to. You know,
okay.
Like a few years ago, I wouldn't be willing to fucking pay to use Facebook or something. The fact, and nobody would. That's why Facebook got so popular, because it was free to use. Everybody could use it, accessible, and it was like not. It was pretty unique in the services it provides. But nowadays, when there's so many different social media platforms, and when so many different platforms are censoring so many different types of content, I am at the point where I, as a consumer, am willing to pay a monthly fee to use a social media platform for like video, text, whatever, images, where I can share stuff and I can watch people share their stuff, and it just not be censored or be held to the standards of advertisers. I am at the point where I am willing to pay, because I know a majority of the population, like a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, would not be willing to. But I think that the more the social media platforms censor things, the more people are going to be willing to pay for a social media platform. And if the demand is there, then, there might be a pay-to-use social media platform may spring up, and it may get big. And you know what? I trademark that. So, pay me if you start a social media platform for that. Hashtag trademarked right here. You can pay me a dividend.
It is worth mentioning that there are alternative social media platforms that have arisen in the last 2 or 3 years that promote themselves as free speech platforms, namely Gab, Minds, and BitChute, which are Minds is a Facebook alternative, Gab is a Twitter alternative, and BitChute is a YouTube alternative. They all bill themselves as free speech. The only things they really seem to ban outright are obviously child pornography and direct incitements to violence. Which in the United States, at least, direct incitements to violence, whether digital or in person, are considered a crime.
Well, in Canada too, and I think in most countries they are.
Most countries in the West, yes.
So these websites are pay to use?
No, they're not.
Oh, wait, then how do they run?
That's a good question, which I should probably look into. But these particular websites have come under scrutiny recently, especially from mainstream media outlets. For the claim by mainstream media outlets is that they promote stuff like white nationalism and white supremacy, but the fact is that they operate under the principle that the United States Supreme Court operates under, in that hate speech is free speech.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a necessary evil if you want a platform that you don't censor, except for illegal activities.
I hate to be in that position where it seems like I'm advocating hate speech, because I'm not. First of all, I hate the term hate speech because it's so nebulous and it's very difficult to pin down. I think you need to start specifying exactly what you mean by hate speech, but I think that if you really want a platform that isn't going to be censored like this, you kind of have to have that hate speech. You have to allow hate speech on there and just let it run its course, because I've always lived under this motto that you should let people be hateful in public. You shouldn't try and ban hateful behavior and hateful rhetoric in public, because then if you don't, you know who the assholes are publicly and you know who not to interact with.
I think, instead of banning it, you can just publicly condemn it. I think that's the best you can do. And I think I'm assuming these platforms haven't taken off. Like, they have a relatively small user base.
Compared to stuff like Twitter and Facebook, yes. But over the last year or so, all three of these platforms have had a big surge in usership. Mostly because people keep getting banned on all these other platforms, and it's where a lot of these people who get banned on like Facebook, Twitter, and stuff end up, because they don't have any other place to turn.
Well, I'm not an economist, but I assume if these platforms ever get to the level of YouTube and Twitter and all these other, and Facebook and everything else, that the only way they're going to be able to support their infrastructure monetarily is to get money,
monetize it.
Yeah, to get money from somewhere, and they can't get it from advertisers. Yeah. So,
and you know what? If these platforms actually do become monetized, I actually wouldn't mind being on these platforms if they could sustain themselves like this, because censorship is disgusting. I don't like I don't like people getting censored for things like for saying things that I personally don't agree with. I would never actually advocate for censorship, but I like you. I think that it's one of those things where you're gonna have to stomach the pill of hate speech to get this.
And I think that these type of platforms are they're gonna grow in popularity the way that the media landscape is going, because every platform is censoring. So
yeah,
the demand
all you have to do is watch the recent Joe Rogan podcast where they had Jack Dorsey from Twitter on there, and you can see that they don't understand why people don't want to be censored.
What?
Yeah, okay, so for anyone that doesn't like, I watch Joe Rogan's podcast religiously, but I highly encourage anyone that hasn't seen it to go watch. It's like a 3-hour long podcast, but trust me, it's completely worth your time. Where he had Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter, on there with obviously a lawyer to throw out a bunch of legalese. It's really fascinating watching them not understand the fact that people don't like being censored.
And I want to just mention that the right to free speech doesn't really apply in this context, because these are private companies.
True.
So they have no legal obligation to let you speak whatever you want. They can censor whatever they want because they're private companies.
Yeah, it makes sense monetarily not to do it, though.
Yeah, because if they censor everything, then no one's going to use it.
Yeah. So the whole reason I wanted to bring up the Reddit controversy is to mention a company called Tencent. Now, if you haven't heard of Tencent, Tencent is a Chinese capital investment firm. They have sunk money into many, many digital platforms like Snapchat, Spotify, you name it. And again, I stress, this is a Chinese-owned and run company. Reddit themselves received a massive investment from Tencent I believe it's either at the end of 2017 or the beginning of 2018. I don't remember now. But then it's amazing that right after this investment is when they changed their terms of service, and this became a problem. Something else that we haven't talked about yet is that on Discord, there was a brouhaha about maybe 6 or 7 months ago that Discord was going to start clamping down on Discord servers that may have hosted Loli and Shota artwork. And some of them, I think, actually were shut down. Of course, some of these that were shut down were found to have actual child pornography on them. But it's amazing that right before Discord started doing that, they received a massive investment from Tencent. This also, something very similar happened with Epic Games, who has the Epic Games Store. And it's also happened with Steam. Steam received a bit of an investment from Tencent, and they're trying desperately to move into the Chinese gaming market. So there's a case to be made that some of this is happening to have a more broad appeal to the Chinese market, and the Chinese market is obviously run by the Chinese Communist Party. So it could all be coincidence. I'm just saying that they all have that thing in common.
If you're a rich bitch, then we don't care about you.
Exactly. But I want to move to wrap this up. So you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit before, but I want to bring this up now. So in fiction, there are a lot of depictions of crime and gore and just unbelievably violent things that seem to be tolerated for their artistic merit. But it's, I think, a good question to ask is, why does this not extend to stuff that could be considered pornographic or at the very least obscene?
Yeah, I don't really understand. A lot of sexualized crime, a lot of fictional depictions of sexualized crime are banned or heavily monitored by the legal system. But these exact same depictions of these exact same crimes in other non-sexual scenarios are perfectly fine, and everybody it's very commonly accepted in Canada and the US and a lot of other Western countries to see horrendous crimes be committed on the big screen in non-sexual scenarios, which I don't really understand why there's such a double standard between pornography and
violence.
Well, not just violence, but like pornography and the standards of pornography and the standards of crime in pornography are so strict compared to the standards of crime in non-pornographic media. And I guess you could maybe attribute it to the relative recency of pornography because, I think depictions of crime in like novels, let's say that, has been done since basically the beginning of time, right?
Certainly since the beginning of the printing press.
Yeah, well, even before that. But like, actual pornography is a relatively recent industry. So it's more we don't know. This is like something that I would expect would happen in the 80s, but it's like, we don't know about this new strange industry. We need to restrict it because we don't understand it, and it's so I've never seen it before. I don't know what to do with it. But like apparently that's still happening, or maybe the laws that were established early on are just haven't been changed. To me, I feel like these laws they don't make rational sense to restrict pornography in a way that is not restricted in non-pornographic material, and they're inconsistent, and I don't understand why.
I think I got a couple of responses. So pornography isn't exactly a new thing. Its wide distribution is. Like there's pornographic artwork that we found that dates back to like before ancient Rome. But the idea of it being widely available to the masses is something that's only come into effect in the last 50 years or so. But I think to your point about like how it's regarded differently in the law. So the law moves at a snail's pace compared to culture. Culture will always move faster than the law can, which is why it seems like this sort of puritanical looking at the way porn is looked at almost puritanically really hasn't changed until very, very recently. So I think that's part of it. I forgot where I was going with this.
Another reason why pornographic material is so strictly regulated is because I don't know if this is true, but the perception of the porn industry is that it is very not predatory. It's very abusive to its workers. The perception is that it is very abusive to its workers, especially to the women workers.
Yeah, I think that used to be the case many, many years ago. I think in some cases, in some instances, that may still be the case. But we're kind of way off topic with Loli and Shodar, but I think this is a good point that a lot of porn that you see widely distributed today is what's known as amateur porn. So the people making it are also the ones that are distributing it. So if there's bad working conditions, it's because you put it on yourself.
I don't know. Okay, amateur porn is a whole other issue. I don't know. I'm more concerned with porn produced by studios.
Do you to get this sort of back onto track a little bit? Do you think that's true of studios that produce hentai?
Well, there's no people involved in sexual acts in hentai, so the work conditions are not.
That's true, but there are people making it.
Yeah, but like the shitty conditions of the people making it are okay. There's a huge difference. Okay, first of all, the shitty conditions of the people making hentai are the same shitty conditions of the people making anime. They're all shitty conditions. Second of all, the shitty conditions of the people making hentai is they're underpaid and they have too many hours and they get overexhausted, right? Compare that to the alleged poor working conditions of sex workers where they might possibly be raped. That's basically... Yeah. So there's a huge difference there with hentai and actual sex workers and their working conditions. So it's hard to compare them.
I've just had a thought that I can... This might be related. You might have to correct me on this. So, talking about a specific anime where I was going to address your point about how pornography is accepted by the greater society. An anime that comes to mind when you said that was Scum's Wish, which Scum's Wish depicts a couple of sexual relationships among underage people, but yet I don't remember. I don't think I remember any like outcry over that, and it's a pretty realistically portrayed like scenario with a sexual relationship of underage characters. But I don't remember any outcry over it being pornographic.
Because it wasn't pornographic. You could tell that the main point of the story was not to arouse the viewer, it was to tell a story. But I mean, the point I'm saying is that, like, I don't understand why there's art in telling a story, but there's not art in arousing people. Like, I think they're both equally artful. I don't know why this like nebulous term art is designated to storytelling, but not to eroticism.
Yeah, they can both equally be artistic. I would definitely agree with that. I think a lot of it, as this seems to be a word that we come back to, a lot of it depends on context. I mean, if you've got something out there that is meant to arouse but clearly doesn't, then maybe it's not artistic. I don't know.
What?
My point in saying that is that I think it just depends on the context of each individual work of art, whether it's trying to tell a story or it's trying to arouse. Like, you have to judge each one independently. You can't lump everything under art, I don't think. It's like you say, like, there's some art that's meant to tell a story and there's some art that's meant to arouse. Doesn't mean they can't both equally be artistic.
I guess I would like... Whether it does a good job of what it's trying to do is irrelevant. Like, it's pretty obvious whether a show... Well, actually, I see what you're trying to say, because, there's a lot of ecchi shows that, allegedly try and tell a story, but they're obviously, like, don't even put any time or effort into the development of the story. All they care about is, while we're trying to tell a story, let's show some, like... let's show some nip
tits.
slips. Let's show some jiggling tits. It's like...
I mean, a good example of that is something like High School DxD.
I don't even know what to classify that as. I see your point.
Shit.
I see your point. That, like, when you try to differentiate between story-driven media and erotic-driven media, sometimes you don't know what is this. I don't know. Half of the shows I watch, I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? I don't want to think about it. But that's a good point to bring up, because you can't really classify. A lot of different things can't be very easily classified into one section or the other. So what's the point in differentiating them?
Yeah. That was my point. Thank you.
Well, you said it very obtusely. I
was doing my best Shinoda impression.
Okay.
All right. So I'm very loath to ask this final question, but I guess I will. So the idea of child exploitation is a very taboo subject in a lot of cultures and countries. So I'm going to just ask the question. I think the answer should be obvious, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Why do you think that is?
Well, why do you think it's obvious?
Okay, so my answer is going to be specifically for countries and cultures in the West, because it's what I know and it's what I grew up in. And this might sound controversial, but I think a lot of it has to do with the concept of a Judeo-Christian value set. I think a
Okay.
lot of people have. I think a lot of people have grown up with, whether you end up believing in the actual Judeo-Christian ideologies and religions or not. I think a lot of people have grown up with that, and one of the core tenets of that ideology is that children should be regarded as innocent.
Isn't one of the core tenets of that also that you should not murder and steal?
Well, yes, but that's also taboo. I mean, it's not like
Are you kidding? No.
not.
I mean,
It's not taboo to the point that people don't talk about it.
murder and theft is glorified on a daily basis by media like every form of media that goes on in America. But that's what I'm trying to say. That like, okay, like a lot of when I put this question on the document, I'm not saying that child exploitation. Okay, a lot of crimes are horrible. Okay, but we still talk about them. We still have various depictions of them. We make fun of them. We romanticize them. We do all different things with different crimes. But child exploitation, you can't talk about. You can't make jokes about. You can't explore in different avenues. You just no. Don't even say it. That's. But like other crimes, you can do whatever you want with it. So why?
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. That child exploitation and I think to a larger extent child pornography seems to be very hush hush, like it's something you don't talk about around friends or family. I maybe it's because we don't want to think that people can be that bad.
I guess.
Maybe it's like a forced ignorance thing, like out of sight, out of mind.
I honestly don't know. I don't know why. I'm sure there's a reason that you could come up with, but I I'm not sure why it might be because it's such a real crime that is not prosecuted at all. Well, it is okay. It is prosecuted.
I would say it's not.
It is prosecuted, but not to the extent that it should be. It's a real problem in our society, and it's swept under the rug by so many people that it's pretty disgusting to think about. So that might be one reason why it's so taboo, because it is a big problem, but nobody's addressing it. Nobody wants to talk about it.
And I've just thought of something with the UN proposal thing. Like, if as broad as it is, you could almost read it to say that, well, you shouldn't even talk about child exploitation, which I think is the exact opposite of what you want to do if you want to actually get this out here as an actual problem. Like and I've always believed this. Like, people talk about like, well, the cure for hate speech is to just censor people and to ban it. And it's like, no, the cure to hate speech is more good speech. So it's like, the cure to child exploitation is not to sweep it under the rug, don't talk about it, and then just silently and quietly punish the people who get caught for it. No, it's to bring it out in the open, to talk about it, and to not like have a veil over it to where people can't even see it.
Exactly. All you're going to do, it's already swept under the rug so much. So banning depictions of it in the media is only going to put it out of you want to put it out of people's mind because you think you're going to encourage pedophiles. Well, what about the people? What about the actual victims? Victims might see this and see media portraying child victims and be encouraged to speak out. Witnesses of child exploitation might see this media and be encouraged to speak out. It's so out of the public mind. And this is not going to help it become more accepted to talk about these subjects that need to be talked about.
Yeah. I think I couldn't agree with you more about that. I think to wrap this up, I do want to point out that well, by the time this goes up, the time will have elapsed, but you can actually petition the UN and put comments on this proposal. There's a link that I can again, by the time this goes up, the time will have elapsed, because you have up to March 31st 2019. We're recording this on March 14th, and our videos go out 3 weeks later. But for anyone out there who thinks this is a bad idea, which it is, it's too broad, let people know, because As we said before, stuff that goes on in the UN isn't legally binding and no country is obligated to do this. However, many countries that are part of the UN take these initiatives and these ideas back to their home legislatures, and they end up becoming in some way part of the legal structure of those countries. So definitely speak out about it, because it's way too broad, and it needs to be either completely gotten rid of or made way more specific than it already is. Yep. Any final thoughts before I close out?
Other than me, no, I don't have any final thoughts.
Okay. Well, thank you all there for dropping in to listen to what was a slightly more serious topic, which I thought actually went really well. We hope you enjoyed it, because we always enjoy bringing this stuff to you. If you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. If you want to keep up with what we're doing and have a little more fun, you can join our Discord server, become a member of our Facebook group, follow our Twitch channel, and visit our website. And if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, or concerns on this or any episode, feel free to shoot us an email. Links to all these things will be down below in the description. I will also be including links to some articles that detail some of the stuff we talked about tonight down below as well, so check those out if you want to learn more. As always, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, show.
Good night.
Come on.